Leo and I have known each other since we were kids, until he met Molly and started spending all his time with her. The day we both fell into the sea, he immediately swam towards her without hesitation. Later, standing by my hospital bed, he said to me, "I thought you knew how to swim." I closed my eyes, not telling him that my feet were tangled in a fishing net underwater. "Leo, help me." I felt myself being pulled further into the sea with each wave. "Leo, help me." I shouted for help repeatedly as the waves kept crashing over my head. I knew how to swim, but my ankle was caught on something, dragging me down. Molly had fallen into the water too, but she had several people around her, and the water where she fell was shallower. I only had Leo near me to ask for help. "Leo, help me." Suddenly Molly, not far away, called out. As the waves surged again, I held my breath, feeling as if the sea was playing a cruel joke, but it quickly receded. I struggled to keep my head above water, looking towards Leo, who had paused upon hearing Molly's voice. "Leo, my leg is caught." Before I could finish my sentence, the rising water cut me off. When I next strained to peek above the water, all I saw was Leo's back as he almost instinctively abandoned me. I had no more strength to fight, all my energy spent on pleading for Leo's help. As I sank to the seabed, the last thing I saw was Leo carrying Molly towards the shore. In fact, everything had signs. Leo had chosen Molly over me a long time ago, in subtle ways. Leo and I had known each other for 9 years. Our parents were business partners, and we were close enough to go to the same college, just different majors. At first, Leo was no different towards me as usual, but then Molly appeared. "Leo, I can't stand that damn teacher's class anymore. Maybe I should switch to your major." I slammed shut my textbook and complained beside Leo. He glanced at me. "You're too lazy, planning to tarnish our major?" Over the years, I had gotten used to his sharp tongue. He was just born that way. Initially, I would feel uncomfortable, but later I realized that it was just occasional remarks. Once when I accidentally broke my mom's new vase, he stood by with his arms crossed, making sarcastic comments. "You're really something, planning for an early death?" I was already irritable, and his words led me to cut my hand on a glass shard by accident. Leo immediately helped me to the couch and tended to my wound gently, but still making sarcastic remarks. "Can't you do anything without using your brain?" Feeling wronged, I sniffed and pulled my hand back. I snapped at him. "I don't need your help, Leo. Just go back to your home. I don't want to see you again or hear you anymore." He looked at me with pursed lips, his expression dark. After a while, he silently got up. I kept sitting there in anger, but stole glances to see him picking up the glass shards on the floor, making me feel a bit better. It wasn't until my mom came home that I panicked. When she angrily asked about the missing vase, Leo stepped in and took the blame. As a result, he was grounded by his mom for days. So, when I heard his words, I just made a light sound. "If you don't want to go, then don't go. What's so good about your major anyway?" I had said similar things before, and he would just scoff and not respond, but today he put down his pen, frowned, and looked at me. "Have you ever thought that while you belittle a major, there's someone else working day and night for a school scholarship? Don't you think your thoughtless words also belittle her?" Caught off guard by his words, I asked unconsciously, "Who?" "Molly." That was the first time I heard that name from him. After that, Molly started appearing frequently between Leo and me. She, in Leo's words, was resilient and noble. Despite being pursued by rich kids, she still worked hard for scholarships and was a self-supporting, sensible girl. One afternoon after school, "Leo, let's go eat hot pot at that place this afternoon," I said eagerly as I stood below the building where he had just walked out of class. Leo flat out rejected. "Go by yourself. I'm going with Molly." After so many years of knowing him, he always called me by my full name, Daisy. I slowly suppressed my smile, paused, and said, "Let's go together. We still have to eat, right? She can't handle spicy. Better not." Suddenly, I sensed something different. The Leo from before had never considered others like this. "Let's go. Molly might come down anytime." She broke the deadlock. I was about to nod when Leo grabbed her wrist. "What's the hurry?" I could sense that despite his strong words, his concern was genuine. Molly smiled and patted his hand reassuringly. "I can handle a little spice, don't worry." Leo relaxed his frown and looked at me. "Let's go." I nodded slowly. "Okay." For a moment, I felt like they were the childhood playmates who had known each other for years, and I was the outsider. Sitting at the hot pot restaurant, we used to only eat spicy, but today Leo ordered a clear broth for her. I sat on the side, watching the interaction between the two of them. Molly looked eager to try the hot pot but was restrained by Leo. He scooped a meatball from the clear soup and placated her. I pushed around the cold hot pot in front of me, suddenly losing my appetite. Just then, I heard a commotion and looked up. Leo was pouring water for her, his voice stern. "I told you, you can't handle this one. Why keep trying?" I watched as Molly's face turned red from being choked, about to offer her another glass of water, but Leo raised his hand to block me. "Let it go." I looked at him in confusion. Leo pulled Molly up and glanced at me, as if to ask if I had said she couldn't handle it. I was puzzled why he was blaming me. Where are you two going? Leo already had Molly's bag in hand. I'm taking her somewhere else to eat. You can eat by yourself. Leo coldly tossed out these words and then whisked Molly out the door. The hot pot was boiling away, and I was still staring blankly at the empty chair across from me. Would you like me to add some more water for you? I snapped back to reality and awkwardly smiled at the waiter. Yes, please, thank you. The hot steam rose, making my eyes slightly moist. That day, I almost put all the dishes I ordered into the red soup. It wasn't until I couldn't eat anymore that I stopped stuffing my face. In the middle of it all, Leo sent me a message. Sorry for getting mad at you. I looked at it for a few seconds, then casually turned off my phone without replying to him. As I approached the dormitory building, I saw Leo waiting downstairs from a distance. I pursed my lips and walked over. What's up? His expression wasn't too good. Why didn't you reply to my message? I didn't expect him to ask, so I smiled and said, oops, my bad, I forgot. He stared at me thoughtfully and asked after a while, is everything okay? Everything's fine, I replied casually, trying to act as normal as possible. Leo let out a sigh. Don't sweat the small stuff. I'll take you out for another meal tomorrow at noon. I subtly avoided his attempt to ruffle my hair and chuckled. No need, I ate too much today. I don't feel like having hot pot anytime soon. His hand hesitated in the air, and he then said, we'll eat something else tomorrow. I kicked a stone on the ground and looked at him apologetically. I'm sorry, but I already made plans with my roommates for tomorrow. What do you mean? Leo raised an eyebrow, his emotions unclear. He smirked sarcastically and said in a low voice, why does it sound like I'm begging you to have a meal with me? It's no big deal, and you're still harboring a grudge. I'll ask you one last time, tomorrow? Sorry, I'm hanging out with my roommates tomorrow. I interrupted Leo's words and replied directly. Molly didn't just change Leo's attitude towards me. Her appearance made me see many things clearly, and my feelings for him were no longer the same. Leo chuckled. Whatever. This is the first time we're not parting on good terms. Leo and I continued our silent feud for a long time. There were only a few teaching buildings, and with many classes in freshman year, I would run into him at various places. Most of the time, Molly was by his side. They went to class together, had meals together, and even strolled on the playground with her in the evening. This was something new when I was with him. Yes, I was a little jealous. I couldn't remember when I started to like Leo. Perhaps it was his impatient and sarcastic demeanor that was quickly followed by trouble-solving and special care that no one else received. But it seemed like the exception was no longer mine alone, and this unspoken love was likely to come to an abrupt end. Once something starts, it doesn't usually end at the beginning. I never thought that one day Leo would stand on the opposite side of me for Molly's sake and accuse me without distinguishing right from wrong. My roommates and I signed up for an experience-sharing exchange meeting to earn credits. It started at 7 a.m., a rather unpopular time, so there weren't many people registered, less than 100. My roommate lazed in bed and asked me to go buy breakfast first. She hurried in just as the exchange meeting began. Several student representatives took turns to speak and share their experiences. I saw Leo in the audience, and I froze for a moment because he rarely attended such events. But the person on stage quickly explained my confusion. The first person to speak was Molly. My roommate was slightly bent over eating her bread when Molly suddenly spoke. The podium made a loud noise. I flinched and looked up. Can you get into a university but not learn to respect people? She finished and then looked expressionlessly in our direction. Suddenly, all eyes were on us. I instinctively looked at Leo, who just stared at me as if I were a stranger. Confused, I turned to Molly and asked, what? Is it respectful to eat while others are talking? She questioned. I glanced at my roommate, who was also puzzled. She gulped down the bread in her mouth, her face flushing as she quietly apologized. I'm sorry, I didn't have time to eat breakfast. Molly sneered. Couldn't you wake up earlier or eat after the event? I furrowed my brow, finding her somewhat aggressive. I stood up, meeting her gaze. My roommate has low blood sugar. If she doesn't have breakfast, she'll feel really uncomfortable. She smirked. Then why didn't she get up earlier? It seems like she doesn't value this exchange meeting, or she has no concept of respecting others. I was taken aback. Leo, standing beside Molly, was now against me. Isn't it already wrong? Why are you making a big deal out of it? Leo's tone was calm, but there was an edge to his words. I stared at him, my hand under the table clenched with pain. Isn't it? He said, in college, no one will indulge your temper. In the silent confrontation, a low sob suddenly sounded. Molly was crying, and Leo quickly turned to look at her. She unexpectedly lay on the front row, burying her head and sobbing. I watched in amazement, not understanding why she was crying. Just because someone had a meal? Molly's cries grew louder, her shoulders trembling uncontrollably. After consoling her gently, Leo lifted his head, his brows furrowed as he said coldly, "Daisy, proudly doing wrong and pretending it's right. Is this what you were taught at home?" I was utterly incredulous, unable to believe he would say such words. Some girls nearby comforted Molly as they glanced at me and whispered softly, "Exactly, she has no shame." My roommate suddenly sat up and loudly told Leo, "It's my food you're yelling at Daisy for." I looked around and saw the growing dissatisfaction among the onlookers. Before Leo could speak, I took a deep breath and glanced at Molly, who was still shaking from time to time. "Sorry for eating while you were speaking, that was not right of us," I said calmly, and then added, "But if your tolerance is that low, I don't really recommend you speak in public again." After saying that, I didn't look at anyone else, just grabbed my roommate and left. As soon as we left the room, a familiar voice called out from behind, "Stop right there." Leo followed me out. I had no intention to engage with him, so I pretended not to hear and kept walking. But he reached out, grabbed my arm, and turned me around. "Do you still have something to say?" I gave him a glance. Leo pulled me closer and looked down at me. "Is this the way you apologize to someone?" I nodded seriously. "Well, how about if I bow down to her? Would that work for you?" Leo was stunned, as if he couldn't believe I would mock him like that. I used the opportunity to free my arm. I gave him a nonchalant look before stepping back and leaving. "Daisy," I didn't turn back. I heard his unfamiliar tone in my ear. "How could you become like this now?" He paused for a moment before finally finding the word, "vulgar." In his eyes, he was different from the ordinary students, having received education and lived a life others could not. Molly valued dignity above all else, so their ideologies coincided. Leo had once lumped me with him, but after this confrontation, I felt honored to be excluded. I blinked at the road ahead, leaving without looking back, as if nothing had happened. Back in the dorm, I blocked all of Leo's contacts. Different paths lead to different destinations, that's the truth I learned. As for the little flutter, it had dissipated when he and Molly united. One night, I had just finished blow-drying my hair in the dorm. My phone rang, showing an unknown number. I answered without caution. Apart from the sound of electric current, there was silence. I glanced at my phone and tentatively said, "Hello? Have you had enough?" That was Leo, his voice sounding husky. I replied emotionlessly, "You've got the wrong number." About to hang up, Leo stopped me. "When will you remove me?" he asked urgently. I didn't understand. Remove what? He seemed to be gritting his teeth. "From the blacklist." I replied casually, "I'll do it when I have time." After saying that, I hung up, cleanly adding that number to the blacklist. I thought that Leo and I would continue like this, until my mom's phone call. "Daisy, what's going on between you and Leo?" Her professional tone made me feel like she was Leo's mom, not mine. "Not much," I said. "Then why did he ask me to call you when you both went to the beach?" "What beach?" I was puzzled. She explained briefly, "Leo and a group of classmates organized a beach party, and he asked you to go along." I couldn't understand. "Why?" She simply explained, "You've known each other for so many years, isn't there any conflict to resolve? Besides, your dad has business dealings with their family." I listened quietly, almost instantly understanding her point. And the last sentence was the key. I remained silent for a while, unsure whether to blame Leo's impulsiveness, my mother's lack of consideration, or my own helplessness. Soon, I received a text from an unknown number. "Saturday morning at 10 a.m., I'll be waiting for you downstairs in the dorm." I stared at the screen, smirked, didn't reply, and didn't block that number. On that Saturday, when I came downstairs, Leo was already waiting. Usually, it was me waiting for him, but now, I didn't feel any joy in that. Leo commented on my expression, "You look like someone forced you." I chuckled, stopped, turned around, and looked him straight in the eyes. "Isn't it clear in your own heart?" He pursed his lips, looking dark and not arguing. I almost instantly spotted Molly among the group, but I just ignored her and walked past. With too many people, they rented a minibus for transportation. Since I easily get car sick, I saw a seat in the front and sat down. As Leo and Molly got on last, they exchanged a glance and then hesitantly looked at me, wanting to say something. "What's up?" I frowned. Molly spoke first, "This seat is mine." "Oh, but when I sat down, I didn't see anything here," I replied, surprised by Molly's entitled tone. They all knew about my car sickness and deliberately left the seat empty for me. Seeing that I had no intention to move, Leo approached and said gently, "I saved this seat for her," after greeting everyone. He rarely spoke to me in this manner, but this time it was for Molly. "Leo," I looked at him calmly, "do you remember how severely I get car sick?" Leo knew about my condition, yet he chose to stand up for Molly. If it were any other classmate, I could have volunteered to give up the seat. After all, it was saved for someone. But when that specific someone turned out to be Molly, my reaction changed accordingly. The people around us were not happy, murmuring quietly. Why should I move? I sat down first to claim the front row. Yeah, I want to play games, sitting at the back so I won't get carsick. Molly's situation became awkward, her pride getting the best of her. She crossed her arms, raised her chin, scanned the group with a blank expression, and shrugged. Fine, I just won't go. She was about to get off the bus when Leo quickly stepped in and held her back. In the end, Leo agreed to a favor from someone in the front row, and Molly finally sat down comfortably. As Leo walked towards the back, I unintentionally locked eyes with him, sensing his reproach. He seemed to think Molly was overreacting, wondering why she was so afraid of getting carsick. As I drifted off to sleep, clutching my bag, she was still reading. During a bumpy stretch of road at the end, I clenched my acupoint to keep from getting sick. Surprisingly, Molly remained unfazed. It dawned on me that all she wanted was to showcase her special treatment from the group. When I stepped out of the car to breathe fresh air at the beach, I suddenly wanted to curse myself for enduring the seasick-like misery my mom's few words had caused. At the same time, there was Leo and Molly's flirtatious banter. Everyone was either excitedly swimming in the sea or having a barbecue. I walked to a secluded spot on the beach away from them. Feeling better, it was Leo's voice from behind. His voice was still as flat as ever, but for a moment I felt like I was back with the old Leo. The Leo who, though sharp-tongued, was rational, who, though teased me, would silently stand behind me and give me confidence. I didn't retort as I usually did. Still feeling queasy from motion sickness, I just shook my head and stayed silent. Leo sat down next to me without saying a word, gazing out at the sea. Why can't you get along with Molly? He asked. With a cold snort, I stood up, took a few steps back, and looked down at him. Leo, are you okay? Can't you see it's her who has a problem with me? I asked him. Leo stood up as well, frowning helplessly. Can't you be a little understanding towards her? He asked. I looked at him for a moment, wondering if this was a logical statement coming from him. Why should I asked. Molly worked hard to get here. She's sensitive, I said, feeling all my anger momentarily dissipate as I accepted the fact that he unconditionally favored Molly. I interrupted him calmly. Does that have anything to do with me? I looked at the crab shell half buried in the sand, not wanting to argue with him about Molly's behavior. Leo, don't lecture me because of Molly anymore. I may dislike her, but I haven't tried to make you dislike her either, so don't force me to like her. You do whatever you want with her in the future, just don't bother me, I said calmly. The sea breeze blew sand onto my feet, tickling them. After a while, a voice came from behind me. So, are you breaking up with me? Leo asked, and I remained silent, unsure of how to define breaking up. The word seemed childish, but unexpectedly fitting. I looked at the shimmering sea, wading in by myself, avoiding Leo. I didn't go too deep, but the waves gradually pushed me further out. Just as I realized I wanted to swim back, a wave from the deep sea suddenly surged, pulling me further out. I struggled to swim back, but couldn't move an inch further. Successive waves hit me, and I realized that my left calf was entangled in a fishing net. The other end of the net was hooked by the coral on the seabed. I tried to move my leg, but it was stuck. Then, I remembered something and looked towards the shore. Luckily, Leo hadn't gone far. Leo, help me, I gasped, watching as he rushed towards me. I breathed a sigh of relief, watching his approaching steps. But the next moment, Molly's voice cried out, Leo, help me. Leo halted his steps. He hesitated for a second, then decisively swam towards Molly. Water rushed into my nose and mouth, and my consciousness faded. As I sank beneath the surface, I knew that the boy who had defended me years ago had disappeared. I woke up again in a hospital bed. My mom was sitting by my bedside, and when she saw me awake, she leaned in, asking, Daisy, are you thirsty? I shook my head slightly, feeling a painful itch in my lungs with every breath, desperately trying not to cough. She sat back down. In the quiet room, a sob could be heard. It was my mom. I looked at the stripes on the sleeve of my hospital gown, not saying a word. She was still busy, even though she felt guilty towards me, but she was quickly called away by a phone call from work. I was left alone in the hospital room, the silence making time seem to stand still. After some time, the hospital room door was pushed open again. I turned to see Leo standing at the doorway, his expression uncertain. I didn't bother to explore his emotions, turning away quickly. He walked over, looking down at me from a higher position. Then he said something I didn't expect. Aren't you able to swim? He asked. I trembled slightly, closed my eyes without answering him, and changed the subject. My voice was hoarse and rough. Leo, do you remember the question you asked me at the beach? I coughed suddenly. Leo poured a glass of water, but I waved it off, shaking my head. For a moment, it felt like we were back at the hot pot restaurant that day, roles reversed. He placed the glass on the counter before asking, "What? You asked if I wanted to end our friendship?" I coughed lightly before continuing, "Yes, Leo, don't come looking for me again." There was no longer any friendship between us. Hearing this, he took a step forward. "We've known each other for nearly 10 years, and you want to end this over something trivial?" he asked. I met his eyes, finding unfamiliar emotions within them. I spoke slowly. "What do you consider trivial? Getting tangled in a fishing net and nearly drowning, is that trivial?" In a moment of emotional breakdown, he kneeled beside my bed, head lowered, and said in a trembling voice, "I'm sorry, Daisy." It was his first apology. "You were definitely scared at that time. It was my fault." He reached for my hand, but I gently brushed it away. "It is your fault, and I don't intend to forgive you. So, can you leave now?" He was about to say something when the door of the ward was opened again. "Are you done yet?" Molly raised her chin and glanced at me with lowered eyes. "Leo said he didn't mean it. He already apologized. What more do you want from him?" I looked at her sideways, absent-mindedly tapping the bedside. "Molly, who do you think you are to blame me?" I couldn't help but wonder if it was because I had given in a few times that made her feel she could be arrogant in front of anyone. "You." Molly stepped forward, glaring. "Leo was right. You really lack manners." Leo, who had been silent all along, suddenly spoke. "Molly, you should go back first." "You're kicking me out?" "I'm speaking up for you." Molly looked betrayed. I picked up the water glass, took a sip, and cleared my throat before saying, "Be a bit nicer to Leo, and suddenly you think you're different, right?" Molly's hands by her side were already clenched, but it seems her pride wouldn't allow her to just walk away. I said slowly, "Can't you see who you really are? Just a student with slightly better grades than average, only able to get a scholarship from a company without going any further academically." Ignoring her angry expression, I continued nonchalantly. "The company that sponsors your scholarship is my family's. I will advise my parents, who you are accusing of not raising their children properly, not to cooperate with the school anymore. Of course, you don't have to worry too much. You can maintain your image to keep Leo's admiration and then have his family sponsor you." Daisy. She was so angry that she didn't care about her image, shouting loudly like a shrew. "Molly." Leo stood in front of my bed, saying, "As I said, you should go back first." Perhaps Molly had really thought about Leo's ability to donate scholarships, but after staring at me in silence for a long time, she left without saying a word. "Sorry, Daisy, I didn't let her follow." "Stop." I interrupted him. "Don't call me that. Do you have to be so ruthless?" His voice was gentle. I still remember the overwhelming seawater that hit me, enveloping me tightly and penetrating everywhere. That silent yet heavy feeling of suffocation made me unforgettable for a lifetime. I couldn't help but cough a few times, sighing. "I'm tired. I want to rest now." The confrontation ended with Leo leaving. It's not an excuse to dismiss Leo. I'm really tired, and soon fell asleep. The next day, when my mom came to see me, I suddenly remembered that I still didn't know how I got back to shore. Obviously, I couldn't have been washed ashore by myself. At that time, the waves were strong, dragging people deeper into the ocean only. If I were washed ashore, it would only happen when the waves receded or if the wind and waves changed direction. But neither of these situations could happen in a short period. And I had to get ashore quickly in order to survive. So I was sure that I was rescued ashore. As for whether it was Leo who rescued me, I didn't even consider it and directly ruled it out. "Mom, who saved me and brought me ashore?" I asked. My mom opened the thermos and said, "Jason carried you on his back, but from what he said, it seems he found you after you were washed ashore." I nodded without saying anything, picked up the spoon my mom gave me and drank the soup spoon by spoon. After being discharged, I quickly returned to school and continued to attend classes like a regular student. But in fact, I had been thinking about this incident all the time. One day, I met a classmate who had been to the beach with me that day. "Is your body okay now?" She greeted me with a smile. I nodded. "Much better, thank you." I paused and then asked, "Did you see who rescued me that day?" "Of course." She widened her eyes. "Many people saw it. Jason carried you up." "Jason?" I looked puzzled. "Jason was quite famous, and he's your senior, don't you know?" I shook my head dryly. "Do you have Jason's contact information? Can you give it to me? You wouldn't want someone who saved you without even a word." A casual voice came from behind, interrupting the girl's words. "It's gotta be our Jason. 3 years have passed, and still no one can beat him. And this young lady wants his contact information every day." I turned around and saw 2 guys standing behind. Then, the taller one, wearing a black half-sleeved shirt and loose gray shorts, looked at me and chuckled lightly. He scolded the guy who spoke earlier and said, in a magnetic and low voice, "Get lost." Without even giving me a chance to speak, he pushed the girl away and left. "Are you looking for me?" It was just the 2 of us left. I nodded, saying seriously, "Thank you, senior, for saving me in time that day." He raised an eyebrow slightly. "It was just a small favor." He made it sound like he just lifted me out of the sea bottom with ease. I pursed my lips and continued, "Senior, are you free for lunch today? I want to treat you as a thank you." "Not quite. I have some things to do today," Jason said casually, then added, "Or you can add me on contact, and I'll let you know when I'm free." I didn't find anything wrong with that. "Okay. Why didn't I see you sticking with your friend today?" he asked again. "What?" I didn't get it. "It's nothing." He didn't repeat and glanced at his phone. After adding me as a friend, he said he had a class and left. On the way back, I met Leo again. "Where did you go?" I thought, "What's it to you?" but still said politely, "Just some personal matters." His drooping eyes showed loneliness. "Today, I went to that hot pot restaurant." I nodded absent-mindedly and felt annoyed looking at the blocked path by him. "Back then, when I left you with Molly and walked away eating alone, were you feeling sad?" Think carefully. Our discord started from that moment. He seemed to be repentant but unwilling to bow down. "Just say what you want to say." "I'm getting impatient," I said. After half a minute passed and he still hadn't spoken, I was about to bypass him and leave. "Daisy," he stepped closer to me and looked into my eyes. "I don't like Molly. I just appreciate her, that's all," he said in a rare serious tone. "I got used to you always being by my side. Thought you wouldn't leave, so you thought you could ignore me, casually hurt me. I'll take it from here." I cut him off. He moved his lips. I waved my hand to stop him. "If it's an apology or something similar, don't bother saying it. It's meaningless," I said. "Well, what do you want me to do then?" he asked with a bitter smile. I used my bag to push him away a little. "Just stay away from me." I quickly passed by him, taking quick steps as if avoiding a virus. Just as I entered the dorm, I received a message from Jason. "I'm free on Saturday." I typed on the keyboard, "Me too. So, should we go in the noon or afternoon?" "Let's go in the morning." "What should we eat in the morning?" I paused for a moment and replied, "Okay." In the 9 years I've known Leo, I've never seen him get into a fight. One reason is because no one would deliberately provoke him, and secondly, his reputation for practicing free fighting since elementary school was well known. But Jason was a tough one. On Saturday morning, Jason messaged me on time. "I'm downstairs at your building." I quickly grabbed my bag and ran downstairs. He was pretty much the same as last time, but Jason took me around all day, from the commercial street to the department store. After lunch, I thought we would head back, but he drove to a newly opened popular bubble tea shop. "Want to drink?" He pressed the car window button and nodded towards the tea shop. I shook my head. "I'm too full from lunch." But as the smell of bubble tea wafted over, I couldn't resist feeling tempted. Seemingly aware of my temptation, Jason chuckled. "Do you want some?" Looking at the sign outside the tea shop advertising new drinks, I whispered, "I do." "Wait here." He nodded and got out of the car to join the line. I watched his tall figure in the crowd and felt momentarily flustered. From dining out to having fun since the beginning of the day, he paid for everything. He didn't give me a chance to pay, but I should have been the one treating him. When Jason came back, it had been more than 10 minutes. I took the bubble tea, knowing I could have lined up myself. He agreed and fastened his seatbelt, gripping the steering wheel with one hand. "There were so many people. I was afraid you wouldn't make it through the crowd," he said. I accepted the reason. It wasn't until late evening that we leisurely returned to school. As we reached the dorm building, I was about to say goodbye and head upstairs. "Just a moment," he interrupted. Then he leaned in, tilting his head close to my neck. I instinctively took a step back. What's wrong?" He grabbed my arm and pulled it back. "Don't move. Is there a bug here?" I dared not move since bugs were my lifelong enemy. Following the principle of not moving if the enemy doesn't move, I stood still, letting him deal with it. He removed the bug and I breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew past, even lifting my bangs. I stepped back to see clearly. Leo, with a grim face, threw a punch at Jason, who calmly caught his fist. "What were you guys doing?" Leo's voice was harsh. I frowned, standing in front of Jason and pushing him away. "Are you crazy?" I said, trying to move past him. "Wait," he interrupted. Then he leaned in, tilting his head close to my neck. I instinctively took a step back. What's wrong?" He grabbed my arm and pulled it back. "Don't move. Is there a bug here?" I dared not move since bugs were my lifelong enemy. Following the principle of not moving if the enemy doesn't move, I stood still, letting him deal with it. He removed the bug and I breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew past, even lifting my bangs. I stepped back to see clearly. Leo, with a grim face, threw a punch at Jason, who calmly caught his fist. "What were you guys doing?" Leo's voice was harsh. I frowned, standing in front of Jason and pushing him away. "Are you crazy?" I said, trying to move past him. "Wait," he interrupted. Then he leaned in, tilting his head close to my neck. I instinctively took a step back. What's wrong? He grabbed my arm and pulled it back. Don't move. Is there a bug here? I dared not move since bugs were my lifelong enemy. Following the principle of not moving if the enemy doesn't move, I stood still, letting him deal with it. He removed the bug and I breathed a sigh of relief. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew past, even lifting my bangs. I stepped back to see clearly. Leo, with a grim face, threw a punch at Jason, who calmly caught his fist. What were you guys doing? Leo's voice was harsh. I pushed Leo aside, with Jason stepping forward. Leo squinted at him, but neither loosened their grip, their veins bulging in their hands. My wrist was twisted as Jason held my hand firmly. I winced. Leo's gaze returned to me, and he immediately let go of my hand. My wrist was red from lack of circulation, a clear sign of being held too tightly. Jason also let go of Leo, then held my wrist and clicked his tongue lightly. Does it hurt? I shook my head. It's fine. Leo looked somewhat flustered. Daisy, I didn't mean to. Leo, I said indifferently, just please, can you stop bothering me? Despite the tone of the conversation, there was still a hint of annoyance and helplessness in my voice. Even if I liked you before, at least I can tell you now, I don't like you at all, I said. Leo's face fell instantly, moving his lips. After half a minute, he murmured, seemingly lost, so, you don't like me? I couldn't understand why he looked so deeply hurt, as if he was the one with unrequited love, and I was the one hurting others with the knowledge of being liked. The campus radio played soft and soothing instrumental music, my voice devoid of emotion. Yes, I don't like you, I said. That day, he never took a step closer, only gazing at me with eyes full of sadness before leaving without a word. Feeling sad? I shifted my gaze from Leo's back to Jason. Sad about what? He sounded emotional in an unclear way. I realized, shaking my head slightly, that I no longer had any feelings for Leo after he repeatedly targeted me because of Molly. Regardless of liking or friendship, just a bit melancholy, not for him, but for myself. Jason lazily murmured, kids' minds are clear, huh? I looked at him puzzled, tilting my head. He raised an eyebrow without explaining. Just glancing at the phone, I realized it was late and it was time for me to go back. I politely said goodbye and left, not used to saying goodnight to the opposite sex. But I was pulled back the next moment. However, Jason didn't touch me. He just hooked the chain of my bag. Got something else to say? His expression was calm. You haven't said goodnight to me yet. Feeling a bit awkward, I smiled and said, well, good night. Go on then, he said with a smile in his voice. His voice was particularly deep and pleasant, making me inexplicably blush. Back in the dorm, I splashed my face with cold water. I thought maybe the temperature had risen again that day. After washing up, I lay on the bed playing on my phone, and the first text happened to be from Jason. There was no caption, just a picture. A pot of flowers, pale yellow tinged with white. Our year counselor had left a comment in the section. He asked, what kind of flowers are these? Jason replied promptly, my daisy. I blinked at his reply, locking my gaze on the two words addressed to me. Half a moment later, I turned off my phone and placed it under the pillow, pulled the blankets up a bit more, covering half my face. In one swift motion. In the quiet night, only the stars witnessed my confusion. The next day after class in the afternoon, I received another message from Jason. He tricked me into going out for dinner by saying he was returning the invitation from the day before. But when it was time to pay, just like the previous 2 times, I was told it was already taken care of. Back at school, I purposely walked faster, leaving Jason behind. Are you still mad? Jason's voice floated slowly to me. Rolling my eyes internally, I ignored him. The footsteps behind me gradually quickened, eventually aligning with mine. Quite temperamental, huh? He drawled. I pretended not to hear him. Suddenly, Jason sped up and stopped right in front of me. Unable to stop, I crashed into him. There was a stifled laugh above me. Slightly annoyed, I glared up at Jason. Just as I was about to say something, a trembled shout interrupted us. Daisy. I recognized Molly's voice, but it sounded like an angry scream. As I turned to look, her expression contorted, trembling all over. The gaze she directed at us was something I had never seen before. More disturbing than Leo's last time, she seemed tens of times more frightening. Like she wanted to tear someone to pieces, leaving no room for escape, with a determination to take it all down together. In that moment, I realized I had misunderstood many things. The book in her arms fell to the ground, but she didn't pick it up. Molly, who valued academics, was allowing the books to scatter on the floor. What was even more chilling was the reason for her sudden change was Jason. To be more precise, she liked Jason. Liked him to an extreme, with no boundaries, willing to go to any lengths for him. Before I could react, Molly had already come forward and pushed me. I stumbled back, instinctively catching myself with my hands. Jason approached and helped me up, gently opening my hand. Streaks of blood mixed with gray seeped through my palm. Jason only looked for a few seconds, then lightly let go of my hand. Expressionless, he walked towards Molly. That was the first time I saw him angry, not yelling, just staring with dark eyes, unsettling. Who are you? His tone was compressed, very different from his usual self. Molly's eyes quickly filled with tears. Don't you remember me? Listening in a daze, I temporarily forgot about the injury on my hand. As she tearfully explained, I gradually understood. According to Molly, at the beginning of the school year, she was harassed by a ruffian in the class. But after rejecting him several times, he held a grudge, and when Molly passed by the basketball court one day, he suddenly threw the basketball at her. However, Jason intercepted him from another court. You play dirty, even against girls? It was during that incident that she fell for the senior who hadn't even spoken to her. Molly took a step forward, speaking rapidly about their chance encounters. She even mentioned specific dates. But from Jason's expression, it was clear he didn't remember. I was somewhat shocked by what I heard. I had always thought she had mutual feelings with Leo. But a few days ago, Leo said those inexplicable things to me. And now, Molly publicly confessing her feelings to Jason. Don't tell me you don't remember anything at all. She shook her head, looking straight at Jason, her voice trembling, complete with anger. Jason was very calm, no impression at all. Molly seemed like her belief had collapsed, her slender white wrist reaching out to tug at Jason's sleeve. I did so much for you, even. Her voice faltered, giving me a glance before shifting her gaze back to Jason. You really don't know? I keenly caught the change in her tone. Even what? Standing to the side, I looked at the girl who was considered a cold goddess by many, tears welling up in her eyes. Suddenly, I had a feeling. Molly might not be as simple as we thought. She seemed to have a more secretive side. From the few days I spent with Jason, although he sometimes appeared unserious, he was not someone who would be rude to girls. However, Molly was the exception. Jason evaded her outstretched hand and sighed lightly. What did you do that's related to me? Have you done something so remarkable it moved you, and now you have to kidnap me to respond to the so-called sacrifices you made for me without my knowledge? Tears streamed down Molly's face, her emotions crumbling into chaos. It was clear that Jason's words had a big impact on her. Passing girls whispered in sympathy for Molly's words, which were clearly audible to me. I didn't show it on my face, but inside, I sneered more than 3 times. Most people are like this, just seeing a scene and making assumptions, easily labeling others. Jason probably didn't like being the center of attention. He didn't say much more to her. Turning back to me, he said, "Let's go, I'll take you to treat your wound." I winced and nodded, my wound feeling a bit numb. Just as I was about to walk with him, Daisy, stop. I took a deep breath and turned around to look at Molly, who was like a sticky slug. Jason stepped in front of me. If you have something to say it now. Molly's soft hair was blown across her face by the wind, messy and disheveled. She chuckled, but there was no humor in her eyes. What, are you afraid I'll push her again? I'm just talking. Jason ignored her erratic behavior and didn't move an inch. I patted his shoulder and said, Leo, it's fine. I also want to hear what she has to say. Circling around Jason, I stood in front of Molly. What do you want to say? She smiled and walked closer to my ear, speaking in a low voice. It's all because of you. I won't let you off the hook. I wasn't surprised at all. It seemed like I was waiting for her to say those words, finding the perfect reason to fight back. I smiled too. I won't let you off the hook either. Later, Jason took me to the infirmary to treat my wound, and we both tacitly didn't mention what had just happened. The teacher at the infirmary was an experienced old man, a bit eccentric. He dabbed my wound with a cotton ball, soaked in alcohol. When he reached a more severe part of the wound, I couldn't help but flinch. Be gentle, she's a bit scared of pain, Jason said a bit faster. I'm already being gentle enough. Why don't you do it? All right, I'll do it. You go rest. Jason quickly took over. The teacher, with eyes that seemed to see through everything, looked at Jason disdainfully. In the end, seeing that disinfecting wasn't particularly challenging, he let Jason handle it. Be gentle. Jason's voice was as gentle as jade, very soothing, and few girls could resist. I turned my head away without looking at him and gave a soft okay. Jason seemed to have some skill in applying the medication. I didn't feel any pain as he did it almost unconsciously. The teacher seemed to have endured for a long time, frowning and waving his hand to shoo us out. Once it's done, leave. The infirmary isn't a place for you lovebirds to show affection. Without giving me a chance to deny, Jason agreed and led me out. Afterwards, try not to get it wet, and then, I actually knew that Jason, you kept mentioning. I realized right after complaining, stiffening my face as I turned to look at him. Great. He chuckled slightly and said, just call me that from now on. With that, he lightly ruffled my hair. I heard my heartbeat getting louder and louder, as if there was a frantic little deer inside. With my roommate's help, I successfully finished washing up that night. Sitting in front of the mirror, wiping my face, I couldn't help but think of Jason again. When I came back to my senses and looked at the mirror, I realized I was smiling without even knowing when I had started. But not long after, this good mood was shattered. My phone rang, the familiar but unmarked number. Given Leo's direct call to my mom before, I hesitated but still answered. I heard you had a little disagreement with Molly today. My tone carried a hint of sarcasm. Planning to stand up for her, force me to apologize? It was quiet on the other end for a few seconds before saying, no. I heard you were pushed. Are you hurt? I rarely hesitated for a moment, feeling a bit surprised. Leo's stern voice almost forced me to apologize to Molly the other day, as if it was just yesterday. But now, his attitude had made a complete turn. But apart from that, I didn't have any other feelings. About to hang up the phone directly, I suddenly remembered something. Leo, what is it, Daisy? I asked. Does Molly have some secret she can't tell? Leo was unusually silent for a long time before refuting. No. His denial lacked credibility. The answer I wanted had been obtained during his silence. In the first few days, I was completely clueless. The clue was a conversation I overheard on my way to the cafeteria at noon. I was puzzled. How could Molly get a scholarship and not me? Your grades aren't as good as hers. What a joke. We went to the same high school, and her grades were just average. Even now, her performance in class is lackluster. Whenever the teacher asks a slightly challenging question, she can't answer. Then ask her what her ranking was last semester, see if she was ahead of you. I froze in place. A seemingly unrealistic but surprisingly plausible explanation popped into my head. Academic fraud. After some inquiries, I finally got hold of Molly's grades. Her ranking matched her scores, but the issue was with the scores. She scored extremely high in a certain course, ranking first in the entire grade. Everything became clear to me when I saw her paper. But suddenly, I felt uncertain. Did I really want to expose her with this paper? I remembered one evening seeing her grandmother handing her a stack of old crumpled bills at the school gate, telling her not to be too frugal and to eat something good. Molly pushed them back, asking her grandmother to buy medicine instead of eating cheap food because she had a scholarship. During the days I hesitated, Molly took action. Can you guys explain to me what's going on here? 2 identical research reports were slammed right in front of me, and I instantly froze. Out of the corner of my eye, a figure appeared at the door, and I looked over. Molly was innocently sipping milk with a straw, blinking at me. My roommate and I had both signed up for a city-level competition, but we were in different groups. Coincidentally, both of us were responsible for writing research reports in our groups. I never expected that she would conspire with Molly to frame me. What hit me even harder was that when I opened the document, the edit history was gone, clearly tampered with. I never hid my computer password from my roommate, but I never thought she would go this far. Rather than having her delete the document outright, Molly had me accused of plagiarism now. Humiliating me in public seemed to be her goal. I had no defense. I just felt it was all so absurd. The me who felt a bit sorry for Molly a few days ago was genuinely laughable. As we stood deadlocked, Jason unexpectedly showed up. Daisy didn't cheat. All eyes in the room were on him. Jason pulled out his phone and placed a picture on the table, showing a side profile of me. I was momentarily stunned but then immediately realized what it was, zooming in on a corner. I was in the library that day putting finishing touches on the report when Jason suddenly messaged me asking for my location. A while later, he walked in with a cup of milk tea and placed it in front of me. It was the new one from our last outing. I softly whispered my thanks through the straw, feeling a mix of emotions. It was a picture he took then, and coincidentally, my computer screen was partially visible in it. The photo showed a timestamp earlier than the one my roommate submitted. So, the mud slung at me was washed away. With some lingering anger, and conveniently with Molly's college dean's office nearby, I gave a brief thanks to Jason and headed straight for Molly. Her face darkened at Jason's appearance. I grabbed her wrist and pulled her towards the dean's office. What are you doing? She looked at me with annoyance, trying to pull her wrist back. Let go. I didn't loosen my grip on her wrist, just smiled back. Plagiarism, academic fraud. Molly, what else don't you know? In an instant, all her strength drained, her face turning pale as I dragged her towards the office. She wasn't completely clueless. She knew I wouldn't expose her without solid evidence. But one thing caught me off guard. Leo was somehow involved. She made a deal with the professor of her major course, allowing her to secure a corporate scholarship. Their stories matched remarkably. The benefit was that a third of the scholarship would go to the professor. But how could a university professor jeopardize their career for a few $100? Once this matter came out, many spoke about the professor's inappropriate behavior toward female students, and Molly's benefits were not just limited to this case. I just shook my head after hearing this. I had never interacted with that professor. I wouldn't make any judgments. Starting from our sophomore year, Molly's relationship with Leo grew closer. This time, the corporate scholarship was funded by Leo's father's company. Leo handed a sum of money to the professor, telling him that the spot was reserved for Molly, and he just needed to keep improving her scores as before. Molly, true to herself, could have directly taken the money from Leo, but she still insisted on going through the scholarship channel. She wanted both the money and the status. The whole truth came out, the professor was dismissed, the school chose not to involve the police, and considering Molly's family situation, she was not expelled, just given a disciplinary action. I didn't have any mercy this time, pressing Molly to repay the past scholarships she had falsely obtained. And the reason I didn't involve the police was just that I considered that if she went in, her grandmother would have no one to take care of her. Thinking back to what she said before, I couldn't help but laugh. Her roommate said she always had a prominent note on her desk. To become better and make him notice me. She cheated for the scholarship, clearly just for living expenses. But in her words, it turned into being entirely for Jason. As she left the office, I said one last thing to her. Don't drag Jason into the dirty things you did. As for Leo, the school not only disciplined him but also contacted his father to return the donated scholarship fund. It was made clear that they would no longer accept any donations from him in the future. Leo's father was furious when he found out, ordering Leo to study abroad and canceling the shares he planned to transfer under his name upon graduation. The day before Leo left, he showed up below my dorm building. I didn't want to see him. Since I found out about what he had done, I felt like I had never really known him. I glanced at him, then calmly walked past. Daisy, my disgust peaked in an instant. Unusually, he wasn't angry and even smiled. Don't be mad, it's just this one time. You won't have to deal with me for several years, he said. I furrowed my brow and asked, so, what do you want? I just want to explain to you, he said calmly, almost gently. I helped Molly not because I liked her. Ignoring the fact that I didn't believe him at all and it didn't matter to me anymore, I didn't say it. She told me that if I helped her get a scholarship, she'd get a boyfriend and then personally explain to you that there really was nothing between us. What kind of reason is that? And now you're blaming me? I asked Leo. Do you even believe what you're saying? He looked at me, and the emotions in his eyes were stubborn and sincere. She promised me that you would forgive me. I didn't know if he was really that foolish in matters of the heart or if he was just looking for another excuse. But I went along with what he said. She lied to you. Leo's expression fell, and he forced a smile. My phone vibrated, and I picked it up to check. Jason, I treated you to dinner last time, isn't it time you returned the favor? I chuckled. He boldly used the same excuse several times. Do you like Jason? Leo asked. I stifled a smile, put away my phone, and looked at Leo. It's none of your business, I replied. I thought he was going to bring up past issues again to question me about my change of heart, but he just quietly lowered his gaze. After a while, he looked at me, curled his lips slightly, devoid of any insincerity. A friend mentioned him, said he seems nice. I was somewhat surprised. Leo let out a sigh, as if giving up on something. You should consider him. I looked up at Leo. Though his lips were curved, his eyes revealed a sense of sadness. Without overthinking, for the first time in a long while, I sincerely responded to his words, okay. 2 months had passed since the Molly cheating incident. The city skipped autumn and went straight into winter. Molly dropped out not long after. She understood that once her facade crumbled, no one would praise her again. Rather than be scorned by others, it was better to leave first. It was late evening when I finally finished arranging things and went back to the classroom to get my books from the afternoon. Opening the door, there was only Jason sitting alone in the empty classroom, playing with his phone. He heard the noise, looked up, and said, "You're back. Why haven't you left yet?" I walked over slowly. He gestured towards a stack of books on the table, keeping an eye on your books. Couldn't you have just messaged me, or returned them directly to our dorm building downstairs? Why wait this long? But I didn't call him out and simply nodded, pretending to agree with him. You have a point. In thanks, let me treat you to dinner. He paused, raising his hand to stop me. No need for a dinner invitation. Let's do something else. I halted my search for books and turned to look at him. How about letting me court you? He raised an eyebrow, straightforward and candid in his words. As the setting sun cast a warm glow on the books beside me on that cold winter day, I felt a warmth I hadn't in a long time. Without much thought, I casually replied, sure. A few seconds later, I heard a light chuckle behind me. From that day onward, Jason seemed to have slipped into my life, omnipresent. The roommate who had helped Molly so obligingly moved out, leaving just the three of us in the dorm room. Both roommates were subtly suggesting that I should accept Jason. I was thinking the same. I changed into a winter skirt, put on a long cream-colored coat, and did my makeup before happily skipping to their classroom building. But as soon as I stepped out, I couldn't help but shiver. By the time I struggled to the meeting spot, my legs had gone numb. I cursed myself 1,000 times in my heart. Out of all things to study, I had to pick cold days with no pants. Just as I managed to recover, the bell rang, signaling the end of class. In the bustling crowd, I quickly spotted Jason. Jason. He also immediately noticed me. My joyful greeting was abruptly halted by the cold, dark look in his eyes. "Who taught you to dress like that?" he asked. Before I could respond, he grabbed my hand and led me against the crowd into a classroom, locking both doors behind us. I thought he was mad at how revealingly I was dressed and pouted in frustration. But in an instant, Jason pulled me onto a table, took off his black coat, and wrapped it around my legs. During the whole process, he didn't even touch my legs. "What kind of weather is this that you dare to wear a skirt?" Jason's reprimand was low. After what seemed like ages, I finally felt my legs again and playfully nudged him with my foot. "Is it not good looking?" I blinked, tilting my head to look at him. "It's good looking." I clearly felt a change in his eyes. "Do you like it?" I asked. "I like it." He nodded. "I think you look good, too." "I like you." Jason was momentarily stunned, then leaned over with both hands resting on the table next to me, staring directly into my eyes. "Is that what I think it means?" My face reddened a bit, but I mustered the courage to meet his gaze. "Yes." As soon as I said it, I hesitantly raised my hands to cup his face and lightly touched his cheek. Jason's voice was deep as he asked, "Just like this?" Before I could respond, he firmly turned my chin towards him. Leaning down, the warm sun shone into the snow, piercing my half-closed eyes. That was my first kiss.